How's it going, trainers, and welcome to another Pokemon Go PvP video. Today, the Ultra League has relaunched in the beginning of Go Battle League Season 1. So I'm going to go and go over about 15 to 18 Pokemon that I consider to be pretty much the meta and what you're most likely going to see more often than other Pokemon. So to get that started, we're going to go through what I like to call the Big Three. And what the Big Three are going to be the top three Pokemon. This is what everyone would strive to want to have, more than likely, and pretty much what the meta is going to focus around to try to counter, in case you don't have it. And the most expensive of these three is definitely Registeel. At 100% IV, Registeel still maxes under 2500 CP, so it gets to level 40, and it's fantastic. It's a good best buddy to have for Ultra League. And you're going to want that secondary move of Flash Cannon and Focus Blast. It just gives you the correct coverage. Swampert, on the other hand, is a lot cheaper, 10k extra move. You do want Legacy Community Day Hydro Cannon though. And I'm going to have to recommend Earthquake over Sludge Wave. Earthquake gives you the more effective move against not only Registeel, but it gives you a play against both forms of Giratina. And that's pretty essential in the Ultra League, so definitely Earthquake. And then Giratina. It's fantastic. Also, that arrow pointing to Giratina is wrong. Giratina beats Swampert. So, speaking of Giratina, why Altered or Origin? To me, the biggest thing is that Altered has more variety in its moveset. So it's going to have Shadow Claw, Dragon Claw, and Ancient Power, as opposed to Origin's form, Shadow Claw, Ominous Wind, Shadow Ball, which are all Ghost type moves. So to me, Origin's kind of like a one-trick pony, whereas Giratina Altered has the beefiness, and it gives you plays that give you super effective damage against a more variety of things. And Ancient Power, again, has that potential for a boost, so does Ominous Wind. But for an example, in a matchup of these two Giratinas, Giratina Altered form, the one with legs, is going to win the 2 and the 1 shield scenario, and that's more than likely where you're going to have them in. When it comes to Giratina Origin form, yes, you could have Dragon Pulse, and you'd want to replace Shadow Ball with that, but it's still just not that great of a move. If it had Outrage, it'd be a lot better. Moving on, so yeah, I guess that's the Big Three. Again, Altered over Origin, in my opinion. It's just up to who you ask, truth be told. So let's go ahead and move on to the other Pokemon. So yeah, as you can see, it's kind of a bit of Pokemon. Let's start with Snorlax at the top right there. Snorlax, you're going to want Lick, Body Slam, Earthquake. Lick gives you good stab, well, not stab, but super effective damage against the ghost types. And the good thing about Snorlax is, since it's a normal type, it's resisting the moves that are coming from at least Giratina Origin and somewhat from Giratina Altered as well. Its Earthquake potential is amazing against Registeel. You're just going to want to watch out for Focus Blast, and it's great against Steelix as well. Otherwise, we got Poliwrath at the bottom right. The really fantastic thing about Poliwrath is it has Mud Shot, and Mud Shot's energy generation is ridiculous. I've said it 1,000 times before. You're going to want Ice Punch, Dynamic Punch. Dynamic Punch will immediately give you fantastic coverage with stab against normal types like Snorlax, Steel types, and yeah. It resists fire types due to its water subtyping. An Ice Punch will do pretty decent against something like Charizard, since it has a flying subtyping, and Ice is super effective. And also it gives you kind of a move to use against grass types with Ice Punch there. Sorry about that, my dog is jumping up here. Come here, dog. Get your leash off. Dynamic Punch also gives you great coverage against ice types, so that's great. And Ice Punch gives you an option against Togekiss, so as you can see, it almost has an option to be usable against everything on this little infographic here. Next up, we have the fire types in Charizard and Typhlosion. Now, both of these you're going to want the Community Day Blast Burn in order to make them competitive. Overheat does kind of give an interesting type of play for the both of them, but Blast Burn just is more energy efficient. So starting things off with Charizard, you're going to want Fire Spin, Dragon Claw, and Blast Burn. And what's really fantastic about that is Dragon Claw is going to give you super effective damage play against some of the Giratina forms, and Blast Burn is going to be great against Registeel, so you kind of have a play against 2 of the big 3 just right away if you line your cards right with Charizard, so very good Pokemon. Other than that, we have Typhlosion. It's going to want Shadow Claw, Blast Burn, and Solar Beam. Solar Beam you're not going to use very often. It's more of like a last second nuke or coverage for something like Swampert even. Otherwise you're just going to want to Blast Burn 99% of the time. And what's unfortunate about Typhlosion is it has Shadow Claw instead of something like Fire Spin. Shadow Claw is great against Giratina, but otherwise a lot of Pokemon here are going to resist your Shadow Claw fast move damage. So if you get paired up with something like a Snorlax, for example, your fast move is going to be doing nothing for a while. But it's still a good Pokemon, and not to discredit it at all. The Fire types, as you can see, then countered the Grass types in Venusaur and Shiftry. Venusaur is definitely the premier pick here. It pretty much walls Swampert, except for if it has Sludge Wave. It's great against Gyarados, and Frenzy Plant hits hard against a lot of things. Its Poison type secondary move of Sludge Bomb gives it coverage against opposing Grass types, so other Venusaurs, and it gives you coverage against Fairy types, so it's a good mon for sure. Shiftry is a fun Pokemon. I love it in Great League, and if you love it too, you're going to love it in Ultra League. Snarl, Leaf Blade, Foul Play is spammy as heck. Leaf Blade comes in about 3 fast moves, and Foul Play comes in 4. It's unreal. You get it in the right matchups, it can do great things. It just has severe weaknesses to Bug, Fighting, and Fairy, unlike someone like Venusaur. Going back to Swampert, we already know how he performs. He's one of the big 3, but Gyarados is an interesting pick. Gyarados, kind of like Swampert, allows you to hit both Registeel and Giratina. Has access to Legacy Dragon Breath nowadays, so it's a pretty neat Pokemon, and it's cheap. It's a 10k extra move mon as well. You can't beat that. It's a good Pokemon. I've used it before. Next up we got the Ice types in Articuno and Lapras, and they're pretty awesome. They counter the Grass types, the Giratinas, and the Fairies. And they have more play as well, depending on the secondary move. We'll start with Lapras with Ice Shard, Ice Beam, and Surf should be the moveset that you'd want for that. Ice Shard, Ice Beam are going to give you the matchups we already spoke of, whereas Surf is going to give you coverage against the Fire types, the Steel types. It's just a good spammy move too, and you can use it as a bait. Other than that, you have Articuno, and Articuno, it is very expensive to get that secondary move, and that candy's a bit precious, but it is a really, really good Pokemon. With Ice Shard, Icy Wind, and Ancient Power, Icy Wind allows you to depuff your opponent's attack guaranteed, and Ancient Power gives you the potential for a boost. It's just a good lead Pokemon. It's a good Pokemon. It's so good. I love it. I use it a lot, and it's a lot of fun to use too. It kind of gives you a purpose to use your Shadow Articuno that you could have gotten if you've been doing all the Team Rockets. You could purify it, keep it a Shadow. It doesn't matter the IVs too much, so it's definitely a good mon. Next up we have the Fairies, and I considered making it like an Elite 4 instead of a top 3 because Togekiss is incredible. Togekiss counters Swampert and Giratina origin form. It gets walled by Registeel, but it's an amazing Pokemon. You're going to want Charm, Ancient Power, and Flamethrower. And yeah, you're pretty much just going to charm a lot of things away, and it's just a great mon. Otherwise, your next best option is Clefable, but I will warn you, it is a lot more expensive. You're going to need to max it, because even at a 100% IV, it maxes under 2500. It does have access to something like Meteor Mash, that makes it kind of an interesting pick. It allows you to counter other Fairy types and gives you Steel plays, so it's a good Pokemon, and it's tanky too, surprisingly tanky. So that is pretty much all the Pokemon here. I didn't really go in depth on Steelix, I guess. And truth be told, if you're on a Steel type, get Registeel. If not, just counter him. So let's go ahead and move on to what I like to call the Meta Munchers. Now, what the Meta Munchers are essentially going to be are Pokemon that can handle 2 out of the big 3. And I mean handle them. So we're looking for pretty much 100% of the time with shield situations able to take that win and keep it going. There could be good lead Pokemon, there could be good safe switch Pokemon, and let's just move on to it. So the first of the 3 that I would like to highlight is Zangoose. And what's interesting about Zangoose is, again, it maxes under 2500 at a 100% IV, so that gives you those fantastic breakpoints. And it has a really, really good moveset in counter, Night Slash, and close combat. The counter and close combat give you, obviously, super effective damage against Registeel that it just can't keep up with. Night Slash gives you an amazing fast move that you'd use as a bait, but it also has the potential to raise your attack, and it gives you a super effective move against the Giratina form. So right there, it handles Registeel, both forms of Giratina, gives you good plays against Ice, Steel, Psychic, and just other ghost types. It falls to Fairy, Fighting, and Grass, mostly Frenzy Plant users, so Venusaur especially. And it pretty much goes toe-to-toe with Swampert. I can't say indefinitely that it will always win it or always lose it. It's pretty much dependent on the moveset, whether it's Earthquake or Sludge Wave, and energy generation, and IVs, and shield situations. So it's a really good Pokemon. It also is kind of the same way with just water types in general, as well as fire types. So as you see, countering Registeel and Giratina though, whew, it's amazing. Next up we have Kangaskhan. Kangaskhan is kind of similar to Zangoose. You're going to want Mudshot, Outrage, and it says EQ here, which would stand for Earthquake, but you're going to want Power Up Punch, in my opinion. Power Up Punch is a great bait move, and it gives you the sufficient super effective damage to patiently chip away at a Registeel, as long as you avoid that Focus Blast. Outrage is a hell of a move against dragon types like Giratina, Origin, and Altered form. And the Mud Slap on this sucker is just insane energy generation. It's fantastic. So it counters Registeel, both forms of Giratina, Ice, Steel, Dragon types, normal, and electric, if you see any. Maybe like an Ampharos, for example. It's a pretty good Ultra League Pokemon. It falls to Fairy types, Fighting, Water, Grass, Fire, and Ghost. So it falls to a little more, but it's both Zangoose and Kangaskhan are both really, really fun Pokemon. And if you have a lot of dust to just throw away, and you have a Lucky or 100% IV, this is the time for Zangoose and Kangaskhan to shine. And it's an Ultra League, so I think I'm going to build one of them and test them out and show you guys. The third Meta Muncher I'd like to highlight is Heracross. Heracross with counter close combat and Mega Horn. And yeah, I know it's a regional, but if you have access to it and can power it up a decent amount, it's not too high level, it's like low 30s, it's really going to pay off. It's one of the better fighters, it counters all fighters, and it's fantastic obviously against Registeel with its fighting typing, and it handles Swampert as well. It does well against Ice, Steel, Normal, and Grass otherwise, and as a fighting type, it pretty much gets walled by both forms of Giratina, like really bad, as well as fairy types like Togekiss and any flying type Pokemon you might see, Psychic, Water, Fire, and Ghost as well. It's probably the weaker of these three. I consider putting Togekiss in this area too, just because of its viability, but it seems more meta than anything, I would say. So yeah. Alright guys, that is the 18 or so Pokemon that I chose to highlight for Ultra League. You're definitely going to see more. It's just kind of knowing your typings and having diverse movesets. And I would say don't worry about PvP IVs. I like with Ultra League to invest in Pokemon that are also good for Master League and kind of power them to Ultra League level. And then as Master League comes, then power them up more and kind of save yourself some dust in the long run. Yeah, otherwise, I hope you guys enjoyed. Please, thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, guys.